Hello and welcome to SarahJane Creates. I'm Sarah. Today I thought I'd show you how to make bread. There's lots of different recipes out there to show how to make bread, but I thought I'd share mine with you. It's really easy. The ingredients that you use to make bread are readily available. You've probably got most of them in your store cupboard anyway. When making bread, you will need to use strong flour. It is called strong or bread flour. I normally buy whatever it is bread flour at my favourite budget supermarket. Begins with an A, ends in I, not sure what's in the middle. But anyway, today though I am going to be making a half and half. So today I've got wholemeal flour, just because I have some, and bread flour. One thing that you will need is yeast. I get mine from a well-known budget supermarket. It comes in these little boxes. This is a double sachet. This actually comes with 8 sachets in it, so you can make 8 loaves of bread, and you just would use 1 sachet per loaf. It's called fast action dried yeast. So I've decanted mine into this little tiny egg cup, which was given to me as a present, not just the one. I did get a set of 4, which is beautiful, from my friend Kelly. Hello Kelly. Other than that, in terms of ingredients, salt, sugar, I use butter. Please look at my blog, it tells you why I use butter. But you can use other fats, or no fats, I guess. It adds flavour, does have a, depending on what fat you use, it will affect the shelf life of your bread, but pretty much in our house it just lasts the day because it gets scoffed up so quickly. I use milk, you don't have to. You can just use water, so I use a combination of milk and water. Right, let's get to it. So I need to put my hair back because, let's face it, nobody likes hairy bread. I'm going to wash my hands, stick an apron on and get the table ready. See you in a minute. Right, now we're all ready to go. One thing I like to do, I take off any jewellery, if you can, and my watch, because no matter how clean you work, bread dough will stick. I also use a knife, see it there, just a butter knife, not particularly sharp, not really to cut anything, but you'll see. And you want a 2-pound loaf tin, about 900 gram loaf tin. It needs to be greased. You can do it free form, so just plop it on the tray ready for the oven, but that's how I do mine. Okay, so I don't like to have tons and tons of washing up, so this is actually quite unusual for me to have all of this like this. I start off with 200 ml of freshly boiled water. I don't know if you can see that, but it's still steaming. I do that first. Then to that I pour it in from the fridge, about 100 ml of milk, whatever milk you like. I use full fat because that's just what we have in this house. To that I add my salt. It's about 8 grams. And my sugar. It's about 7 grams. You could use another sweetener, maybe something like honey, that will give you a different flavour. The sweetener, the sugar, is important really to help with the yeast, to help that, it's food for the yeast, to help it to do its thing. Salt is flavouring, so you can reduce the amount of salt that you put in if you wish. You can also try and experiment with flavoured salts. So there's that lovely Himalayan pink salt, there's smoked salt out there, all sorts of different things. Have a go. Try with a different sugar, maybe if you've got some Demerara sugar. I just use bog standard granulated sugar. It's the cheapest sugar that you can buy. Get my knife and just stir it in. What you're doing is you're dissolving the sugar and the salt, which will make it easier to combine in your flour. Next to it, I'll add my 25 grams of butter. Again, I'll put it in here so that the heat from the milk and water solution will melt the butter, which means that when I add it to my dry ingredients, a lot of the hard work's been done for me. I'm not having to try and mix all of this in. So just leave that. As that's melting, that will cool the temperature of this once boiled water down. We need to cool this a bit, just so that it doesn't impede the action of the yeast. If it's too hot, the yeast won't work. But modern yeast, the dried instant action yeast, is very tolerant. It's more tolerant than if you'd ever used fresh yeast. That means that it doesn't matter if it's a little bit colder than body temperature or a little bit warmer than body temperature, the yeast will work. So we'll just put that to one side. Over here I've got my 2 flours, and I like to use this bowl. This is my favourite bowl ever. It's because it's got a handle really, and it's a good size. So you need 500 grams of flour. Today I'm using just white flour, which is white bread flour, strong flour, and wholemeal flour, just because that's what I've got. I'm just going to tip those all in together in my nice big blue bowl, and in here is my sachet of yeast. Chuck it in. That's it. Just mix it round with your knife. Doesn't matter if your knife is a bit wet. Just mix it round. Right. Yeah, you can see. Just mix it round. Then, taking your liquid, your salt, butter, sugar solution, give it another stir. Doesn't matter if it's not completely melted. And then you are going to tip it all in. And if you've got any little bits that haven't gone in, just scrape those out and put them in. That's that. Using your knife, you want to stir and combine. I know it's a bit of an odd thing to do, to be using a knife to stir, but we really want to try and keep our hands out of this mixture as long as possible, just because once you put your hands in, they will get all claggy. So do as much as you can with the knife. Obviously, be careful if you are using a knife. Once you've got it partially combined, you can then tip it out. I don't tend to add any extra flour, only because I've only partially combined it. So pull the bits out. If I was doing this standing up, I wouldn't even tip it out, I'd just do it in the bowl. But obviously you don't get to see too much like that. So, and then just press and turn, and what you're doing is squishing together all of these lovely dried bits, you know, the dried flour and the bits of yeast, and you're getting the gluten strands active. And what they do is they kind of break and strengthen and break and strengthen. And look, can you see, look, I'm already starting to get a bit doughy. It's unavoidable, there's nothing you can do about it. But look, it's kind of minimal, whereas if you'd have done, if you hadn't have used the knife and gone straight in with your hands, oh my gosh. I'm thinking of writing a book of pearls of wisdom for my children, things that I never told them. Possibly that will be in there. I'm not really seriously thinking about writing a book. And can you now see how it's coming together, and how, because you haven't added any extra flour, you haven't really needed to for a start. And you just keep going. You don't have to beat it with a big stick or you know, get really aggressive with it. I mean, people do say that making bread is a really good way to work out your frustrations. Do you know what? I've never found that. I find yelling at the kids much more satisfying. Joking, no. I do find baking is something that you kind of need to be in a good frame of mind with, because you're making something, you bake it with love, and it really shows if you make a cake in a bad mood. So now we've got this smoothish texture, okay? Pop it back in your bowl. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit floury, stick it back in the bowl. Once you've put your dough back in the bowl, you need to get a clean, damp tea towel like this. Just fold it over, lay it over the top. That will prevent a skin from forming on your lovely dough. You need to now place this in a warmish spot. By that I mean away from any drafts, so not near an open window. Once you've got your dough back in the bowl and covered with your damp tea towel and a nice warm spot so the yeast can do its thing, clear up the kitchen, of which there's lots. I've never ever used that much equipment ever. Get yourself your loaf tin greased, or your tray that you're going to put it on greased if you don't have a loaf tin. Only a very, very light covering of butter or oil, really, really lightly greased. And go and get yourself a cup of tea, piece of cake if you've got some, and I'll see you back here in an hour for the knockback. Dun, dun, dun. Welcome back. So now our bread has been resting somewhere nice and warm for an hour. This, you see that, is what we should have. See how much it's risen? It smells lovely. I'm just going to move the lens down a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to tip it out. I just ease it away from the side of the bowl. In fact, you don't even need to tip it out. You can just scooch it around the bowl, but so that you can see what I'm doing. I will tip it out. And you just want to knock some of the air out of it, which is what's called knocking it back. So the action is pull from the top to fold it over, and then push with the heel of your hand. Fold. You can pick it up and turn it. Yeah. You don't need to do it for too long. Yeah. I love the smell of it. I love it. And once you've got it nice and knocked back and in a nice kind of shape, if you wanted to, you could just pop that straight on a lightly greased baking tray with a damp cloth over it again, or get your prepared loaf tin. See, very lightly buttered it. I tend to use the same fat to butter or grease a tin with that I've cooked with, just so that you don't get sort of odd transference of flavour. And one thing that I have forgotten to mention, I always use unsalted butter, always, and just plop it in your tray, in your tin like that. I, using a fist, just push it, just to encourage it more into the shape of the tin. You damp cloth again and leave it covered again in a similar warm place to do its second rise. Okay, so again I will see you in about an hour. Hi, welcome back. So after an hour your bread should now look something like this. It should be well risen, nice and rounded on the top, and ready to go into the oven. So now it's time to put our bread our loaf of bread in the oven to bake. So this is the oven that I use most. It's a microwave oven, but it's also a full convection oven. So it goes in for 30 minutes. Check at 30, you might need another 5, just double check. 200 degrees Celsius, gas mark 6 or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Look at that for a gorgeous loaf of bread. Smells delicious. Who would not want to eat that? When I cut this, I always lay it down on its side. You need a serrated bread knife. And don't push, just use the knife like a saw. Because it's on the side. Don't know if you can see that terribly well. Look at that lovely, lovely texture. So nice. Beautiful. Go on, have a go. Let me know what you think. Bye.